You can discuss anything. What page is that?
Page 1826.
Okay.
Now, this is the clarification. The noble disciple refers to monk or the lay disciple.
Noble disciple means an Aryan disciple. An Aryan disciple can be a lay person or a monk.
It's not about solitude, in the day and seclusion at night. So, for lay disciple,
That is still necessary if you want to progress from Sotapanna to Sakadagamin and Anagamin and Arahant. A lot of lay people, because they cannot let go, so they cannot progress. The most they can attain is stream entry. But there are some during the Buddha's time, like Chitta, Hataka and all that, they go into seclusion. Their room, their house, the room becomes like a cave to them. They don't get out of their room. They practice day and night in their room until they attain the 4 jhanas and all that. Nama.
talking about the last talk. Now, between the just occurred to me how chemical advantage of immune regarding the organ communication.
Organ.
Most of the time, the organ needs to be harvested when the person is declared clinically dead. Yeah, because I remember reading about the newspaper report of this girl that got the second transplant. The person who did the family who did the second half was the father who accepted because he was urging of the doctor that they harvest the organ from the son.
Why did the father regret?
Because I don't know, probably after that I think I was due to some influence of the whole the newspaper, the father expressed regret of getting the organ from the son. I don't know, I mean, and just because until I mean, the person they doctor certified clinically based is normal heartbeat.
You see, and just now I mentioned in the Buddha's teachings, a person is really dead when 3 things leave him, right? The vitality, consciousness, and body heat. So I would suggest that if any person wants to donate his organs, that he can stipulate this condition that only when the body becomes cold, that they can take away the organs. Because people have downloaded for me from the internet. Sometimes it seems there are some people even declared to be brain stem dead. Some people get into accident and their brain is damaged and they have no chance of recovering because the brain is damaged. So the brain stem, once the brain stem is dead, the doctor says this person is dead. And they start taking the organs. But it seems there's some evidence that when they do that, certain people, that body becomes frightened, in the sense that the heartbeat, the heart pumps faster, blood pressure goes up and all that. So,
I mean, I ask this question because some people sign the organization form is their exploration to the organ. And in order for they to the chances of success of those organ transplant, the organ is our fast. So, what can the family member do to assist that since it's a bit clinically dead and no chance of recovery? So, and then they say that the last thought cannot be controlled. So,
wait a minute. There's a difference between clinically dead and brainstem dead. Because I said clinically dead means the heart has stopped beating and the breath has stopped. But there have been cases of people even clinically dead, declared clinically dead. After 1 or 2 days they revive. They come to life again. So they have not died. The doctor thought they have died. So in the case of clinical death, if the body is still warm, usually it's not dead yet. And if you start taking the organs and all that, it may not be good for him. So as I mentioned just now, if you have already signed the form, then you can add a condition that only when the body becomes cold, the doctor can take. Oh. Certain countries like Singapore, they don't need you to sign. They assume that you have already donated. Isn't it? Yeah, Leslie? Eh? Consent. Oh, the parents still have to consent. Oh. Oh. I thought there's a certain law that they assume that you have no. Right. Malaysia definitely, because it's Muslims and Christians, they don't like to have the body cut up. I think it's also in the Majjhima Nikaya. I mean, if the family can afford to hire a maid to look after, that would be ideal. So if you can, like once in a while, just go and pay a visit, at least show that you know the burden also. They like to share a bit of that burden. And once in a while, it's good. It's like giving them moral support. But if you don't go at all, some people, they feel very annoyed. You have to compromise a bit, I guess. But like in her case, I know that she has some other sisters or what looking after her, and they don't really need her. But once in a while, at least she show her presence to make them happy. But like today, when I asked her to stay longer, she said that the family, if she comes too long, the family may not be happy. So it's not just that relative who's sick, it's that her own family itself. She feels if she comes too long, they feel like she's neglecting her duty. So it's a matter of compromise. We do what we can. Good rebirth? No, that's stream entry. Stream entry. Good rebirth, you don't have to learn the Dhamma. If you are a good Christian also, you can go to heaven. Here it's about stream entry. To become a Sotapanna, you must hear the Dhamma and understand the Dhamma. That's why the Buddha said, even the chala trees, if they can understand if they can differentiate between what is wholesome and unwholesome, that means if they hear the Dhamma, even the trees also can become Sotapanna. In other words, stream entry, becoming a Sotapanna, is by listening to the Dhamma and not meditation.
In this case, I mean your physical Dhamma. Now, when you follow the Dhamma, then you are looking at the Sutta, that is the Dhamma. How about the other Buddhist friends following the Mahayana tradition, they listen to all the others of Sutta, or the Idam, and all the others. What happens?
If you study those Mahayana Sutras, as I have studied for 9 years, and you will know that there are contradictions with the Theravada Suttas. That's one thing. Secondly, if you study the Suttas, you find among Mahayana Sutras themselves there are contradictions. And then the third thing is that the Buddha gave a warning, I think in this Samyutta Nikaya, I think it's 20.7, the Buddha said in the future, people will not listen to his words. The discourses of the Buddha, dealing with emptiness, dealing with not self, dealing with suffering and all that. Instead, people want to study the words of later disciples. So, when the Buddha talks about the words of later disciples, that refers to Mahayana Sutras, because Mahayana Sutras appeared 500 years after the Buddha's passing away. Started by people like Nagarjuna, Asvagosa, Vasubandhu, etc. And in the biography of Nagarjuna, what the Chinese call Longsu Pusa, he was asked, how is it that previously there were no such sutras? Now you say that these are the words of the Buddha, discourses of the Buddha. Then he said he went to the dragon palace under the ocean and took out all these sutras. That we cannot accept because firstly the Buddha says that he does not have the closed fist of a teacher, he does not hide certain teachings. And also the Buddha said very clearly that the true Dhamma is for all to see. Only deviant teachings are secretive. If any teachings are secretive, there must be something wrong with it. That's why they want to be secretive. So that's one thing. The other thing is that during the Buddha's time, there were no books. So how could the Buddha have hidden the books in the dragon palace? There were no books during the Buddha's time. Books only appeared 500 years after the Buddha's passing away. Right? Thirdly, if you look at the Mahayana Sutras, at the back of the Sutras, they always encourage people to rewrite those sutras and distribute. Now, during the Buddha's time, nobody could have asked anybody to write the sutras and distribute because there were no books during the Buddha's time. So we know definitely all these writings appeared years later. And another thing you find in Mahayana Sutras, it is characteristic of Mahayana Sutras to always talk about Mahayana and Hinayana, big vehicle and the small vehicle. And that shows the Sangha had already split. But during the Buddha's time, the Sangha was one Sangha. There was no split Sangha, no Mahayana and Hinayana. So these Mahayana Sutras must have occurred hundreds of years after the Buddha's passing away, then when the Sangha was split into different sects. The other thing is not only later teachings, it's not only Mahayana Sutras, but even in Theravada sect himself, you have commentaries, those are later teachings. You have Abhidhamma, you have Visuddhimagga, all those are later teachings. Of course, there are certain good things inside there, but unfortunately it is mixed with Adhamma, things that are contradictory to what the Buddha said. So because of that, we have to be very careful.
So, a lot of people are very good at this kind of
yes.
What happened to them? I mean, according to this, what was going to they can't really become a Tapana,
Yeah.
I mean, all their effort is.
So, in other words, they think they are Buddhists. They are not Buddhists. The Buddha says they are outsiders. They are not Buddhists. Which reminds me that in certain suttas, when the Buddha taught to some external sect ascetics, of course they argue with the Buddha, and after argument and all that, the Buddha showed them the true Dhamma, then they become converted. You know what they say? They say, they are so fortunate to hear the Buddha's words, and then they say, they thought that they were monks, but they were not monks. They thought they were following the true Dhamma. They were not following the true Dhamma. So, unless you have the good karma to come into the true Dhamma, you can be misled for many years. Just like the Chitta Sangyutta, we read about the external sect ascetic, the naked ascetic by the name of Kassapa. He spent 30 years suffering as a naked ascetic, and he gained nothing. And then when he met Chitta, then he was shocked to find Chitta is a lay person following the Buddha and has become an anagamin, has attained the 4 jhanas, and will be reborn in the 4th jhana heaven. Then he realized he wasted all his time, and then he became a Buddhist monk. So a lot of people, because of not understanding the original teachings of the Buddha, we spend a lot of effort. Like I did, I spent 9 years in Mahayana Buddhism. At the end of it, then only I got disappointed. So it's very difficult to change such people's mindset because they have not investigated the original sutta. If they took the trouble to investigate, then only they may realize. It's just like people who follow other religions. They don't understand the Buddha's teachings, so they belittle the Buddha's teachings. But if only they took the effort to understand, then they may appreciate. Yeah.
This one, regarding to the star, there are 4 things.
Which one? Which one?
The 4 things, not the disciple will present these 4 things, and you become
Yeah.
Does that apply after life or in this present life?
Once a person possesses, that the sutta says, the noble disciple will possess these 4 qualities. That means once you become a noble disciple, you will attain these things, even in this lifetime. The only thing, it takes time. It takes time.
Thank you. Somebody online mentioned that all the things that we've done are showing that they're wrong, following the wrong view. So it's mentioned that wrong view will lead us to the awful place. But if we get followers, we donate money to clean all the books based on wrong view. So what is it?
Just because like you donate, you have a good intention, but because you are doing something that is not really beneficial, so the merit from there is very, very small. Even though you have a good intention, it's very small. It's like some people, they think it is meritorious to bow to the Buddha statue. If there's any merit, it's negligible, so small. Or it's meritorious to offer rice to the Buddha, or to chant repentance and all this. You have good intention, but the merit is so small. If you support our Dhamma, but your intention is good, there is some merit. However, if you believe in that wrong Dhamma, that is bad karma. Having that wrong view, believe in that wrong teaching, that will bring you to a bad rebirth. We find in the sutta, there's one sutta, I think earlier we read about the Devata Sangyutta, one of those suttas, that in the heavens you have disciples of external ascetic teachers. In heaven also, even the teacher is teaching wrong, but because they did good, they support the teacher and all. The only thing is they didn't understand maybe the teacher's wrong view, so they are reborn in the good heaven.
It's about supporting the Sangha. Even though we support the Sangha, still we need to support them for get the Sasana will continue and Arahan will arise. We do support the Sangha, then the Sasana will get So when we support even the other Buddhist sect and all this, is it something good?
If you support some other Buddhist sect, it probably is not the Sangha, because if you support them, in future what they teach is not the Buddha's teaching, right? If you support the Sangha that propagates the right Dhamma, that is meritorious, that is very meritorious. But if you support a Sangha that teaches something else, it's not the Buddha's teaching, then that is not supporting the Sangha. Do you know that in the monks' Vinaya, it is mentioned, the Buddha said that his disciples can have communion, that means associate, mix with even external ascetics if they practice the same Dhamma Vinaya. That means if a Hindu Swami, what he practices is the same as what the Buddha teaches, we can consider him to be part of the Sangha. It's not that he wears the same robe, it's what he believes in, what he teaches.
More clarification, can it be the Mahayana monks and all the Tibetan monks are not considered Sangha?
In the Vinaya, if we go according to Vinaya, they are not considered part of our Sangha. Because the Dhamma and the Vinaya they practice is different. The suttas or the sutras they follow is different from our Theravada's suttas. And the Vinaya they keep is also different. Not to mention Mahayana or Tibetan monks. Even Theravada monks, if they follow different Dhamma Vinaya, we also cannot mix with them, we cannot consider them as part of the Sangha. For example, if some monk, even though he wears a Theravada robe, he does not keep the precepts, we don't consider him as part of the Sangha. You know that? That's one thing. Secondly, the Buddha did not, other religions, consider the Sangha as all the monks, A Sangha is defined as a group of monks who live within a sima, within a boundary. Those who live within a certain boundary are considered one Sangha. Once you step out of the boundary, you are no more part of the Sangha. A lot of people don't realize. So like for example, our monastery, the sima, the boundary, is the boundary of our land, 15 acres land. Any monk who's outside our boundary is not considered part of our Sangha. Even though they are Theravada monks, even though they keep the same Dhamma Vinaya, only when they come into our boundary, they are considered one Sangha. A lot of things they people don't understand. So that is one thing. Another thing is if they follow different Dhamma Vinaya, the Buddha says we must not associate with them. We must not treat them as the same Sangha of monks. So if Mahayana monks, they follow Mahayana sutras, and they don't keep the Vinaya like we keep, then we don't associate with them. However, a monk like maybe Kong Hai Fa from Taiwan, he teaches, even though he wears the Mahayana robes, but he teaches the Dhamma like our Theravada Dhamma, we can accept him as part of the Sangha, even though he wears different robe. So what is important is whether the Dhamma and the Vinaya he practices is the same as us according to the Vinaya. Okay, shall we stop here?